So in the last video, we looked at different ways we could draw some leaves, different shapes we could use, some of the different details we could use inside, and so forth. So what we're going to look at this video is how we're going to shade them. Now again, this isn't the only way you can shade them. There's going to be different ways. You'll find the ways you like, you'll find the ways you don't like, and they'll be different in every different situation. Sometimes a particular style of shading won't work with a particular piece, so always be flexible and try new things out. You might find something that you really like. So I made sure when I did the details on the leaves that I kept the lines on the inside separate from the leaf itself. Otherwise we'd have to be clicking in each one of these little gaps to select it, and that gets quite annoying quite quickly. So we're going to zoom in so we can see where we're working a bit better. So we're going to take our fuzzy selection tool, and again I'm going to take half of each leaf to start with, so I'm not interfering with other parts. And chroma selection, select black, make sure I've got my correct tool. There you go, got my paintbrush tool, my airbrush tool, sorry. And all we're going to do in this particular style, we've got this triangle in the middle, and we're going to fill from the edge of the triangle just out a little bit. So we're not going to have tremendous amounts. If we do too much, we're not going to leave any space for any other colour that we might want to put in. We can go all the way up if you want. A little bit like that. That's all I'm putting in. Now I didn't select this leaf at the same time when I did this one because I wasn't sure if the size of the brush was going to interfere and run on. So it's always good to keep the tool that you're using in mind. There we go. And what we're going to do is the same on the other side. So take our fuzzy selection, grow the selection, head onto our black layer, select our tool that we want. Just down the outside of it as well. Okay, you don't have to worry about having the exact same amount of black on either side. Yeah, if you feel one side, like we can see the leaf's a little bit bigger on this side, so there's more space to put black in. We wouldn't want to go exactly the same size and take up too much of the leaf and not leave any space left for colouring. Now I can see we've got some different style leaves here. So again, fuzzy selection tool. Just going to take up all of them in one go. Back to our black layer. And this time, we're just going to do the bottoms of them. Let's make our airbrush a bit bigger for this part. I've come up a little bit further on this one here because I want to just go over the edge of the line here so we can separate from the two. So it's obvious that that's where that one's finishing and this part's starting. There we go. So that's the black on these leaves here. So what we're going to do, we're going to now step onto these little inserts here, the triangles that we left. Again, select them all in one go here because they're all going the same colour. And we're going to do these yellow. So just take our yellow brush. Oh yeah, nice and easy. Make sure we've not missed anything. Back to our main line layer. The flower layer here is our main line work. So fuzzy select. Select all these little ones at the same time. Now what we're doing here is we're going to go onto our green layer. going to use a dark green for this particular one. Select our airbrush tool again. I'm just going to leave the tips of them. Just leave them open. You could go ahead and do the tips yellow if you so wanted. That's fine, that would work. Or we could do them a different colour, you know, doing purple, doing red, whatever you think fits. Go back to our flower level. We're going to select these again. So I'm going to use a slightly different green here. I've got my two. I've got a dark green, I've got a lighter green. Again, we can go right to the edge if you want, like that one, and just colour it all the way in. But I like to leave just an ever so slight edge that isn't fully saturated in the green or whatever colour we're doing. It just gives the illusion that it's got a highlight, that there's light bouncing off it, and gives it a little bit more dimension, a little bit more variety, so it doesn't look as it doesn't look flat. You know, we don't want to run like if I was to colour them all in solid green, we run the risk of it starting to look like a colouring book, and that's not what we want. We want it to have some life and some dimension to it. So back to our selection tool. That the parts didn't do. Back to our green. And again, just if we deselect it and zoom out, so we've got a fully finished piece there. Use two different greens for the leaves just to give them a bit of variety. You could have used a darker green on these ones if you wanted, and a lighter green on them. You can make that's your preference, whatever you feel looks better. Let's save that. Okay, so we're going to move on to leaf 2, which is the one up here. Let's close that, open this one. So again, we can see we've got two different types of leaves here. We've got the bigger leaf and a smaller leaf. So we're going to start with the smaller leaf because there's only two of them to start with. So take our fuzzy selection tool. Again, we're just going to get some black on the go here. Take our airbrush tool. Just a little bit of black. Just to fill in those edges that, you know, it's almost like that's where light would naturally fall. Although we don't have to worry so harshly about where the light source would be. If we can put some in so it makes a bit more sense, it's not going to be a bad thing. I'm going to go back to my flower layer. Now again, I'm going to select each section. It's got lines and that's not a problem. We're taking half of these lines to start, half of the flower to start with. Going to go back onto our black layer. Go back to our brush. Got black on the brush. We're just going to go down the edge of the selection here. Okay, we're not coming tremendously far out. We don't need to. A little bit on the edge of it there. I'm going to deselect everything. Go back onto the flower layer. Take our fuzzy selection tool. back onto the black layer. And just the same, down the edge, but the opposite side this time. So we can see we're starting to give some more texture. Now I specifically chose this side of this black leaf here, otherwise if I'd done this side we'd have a big area black here rolling onto a big area black here, and this whole dimension between the flower become very nondescript and it just looked like a black mess. You wouldn't be able to know that that was two specific leaves. So there is a reason where we put black, although we are fairly free to mix it around wherever we want. I'm going to duplicate this there because I want to use 2 greens on this one on each leaf. So go back to our fuzzy selection. I'm going to start with the smaller leaves. We're going to go with our dark green here. Put some dark green in. Now we're going to get our light green. I'm going to move that down a layer so the light green is underneath so it doesn't overpower the dark green. Let's soften that up a little bit. There you go, that's better. Into the black now, soften that black a tad. There we go. So we're going to do the same here on these leaves now. Go to our fuzzy selection tool. And we're going to go to our dark green to start with. And what we're going to do, we're just going to run a little bit off where the black was. I'm going to make that brush a bit bigger to soften it as well. So we're just going to extend off the black into some green. Now, I might notice I'm colouring here, but I'm drawing here. It's because I've used a large airbrush, so I can get that softer fade and the softer gradient between them. Let's go on to the other green layer and select a lighter green. Just the same thing. I've done that the wrong way around, it's okay. Yeah, so we've got our light green here. Let's just throw a light green first, we can go back over it with dark green after. Just leaving a little bit of an edge to give the illusion of light. You don't always have to do the transition between 2 different greens. You know, sometimes if you're in a tiny area, especially when you're tattooing, you might not have the space to go between the two colours of green. So just using one colour is going to be your only option sometimes. So we've got dark green here, we've got light green here. So again, we're going to go with our light green. Just leaving a little edge of the light. onto our dark green layer. Same thing. We zoom out. That's another finished one. We can see between the different greens. Actually, I've a bit of dark green there that I forgot. So let's just go in and put that in real quick. There we go. There's another one finished, so we'll give that a save. Don't want to lose our work. So number 3, we're looking at this, the big one in the middle now. So let's zoom in to give us an idea how we're working. Now I've got 2 different styles of leaves here. We've got some with the bases hidden, and we've got the bases open in here. So we're going to use 2 different styles of shading. Only because this set of leaf has one style of shading doesn't mean this one has to as well. So I'm going to do all these 4 at the same time. So we're going to take our fuzzy selection. And we're going to take our black. We're just going to do the bases of them. Just like this. That's easy enough. I'm also going to merge that with the layer below to make the next step easier. So we're going to look at the black on these ones, the big leaves around the edge now. So again, our fuzzy selection. And as we're going to be working fairly close with a big bush, I'm going to alternate some of the leaves in one selection and doing a different selection so we don't interfere with each other. I'm going to grow a selection. Go onto our black layer. Take our brush. What we're going to do different this time, we're just going to do the bottom half of this leaf. Just like that. Same here. Just the bottom. Same here. Okay, take our selection tool again. Okay, we're going to do these 2 leaves, and these smaller leaves are going to be slightly different again. That's all right. Back to our selection, our airbrush. Just the sides of them. There we go. Now we're going to take these 2, and we'll take these 2 and those 2 separately. Fuzzy selection. Grow the selection. Back to our black tool. Just the bases of them. Take our selection tool. Back to black. Now I selected these 2 differently than that one, even though they've got black base. Otherwise, the black here would have ran all over the edges of there. And it would have lost the control of the black that I was after. Now what we're going to do, we're going to start some green on the leaves. We'll go back to our flower layer. So we're going to do all these 4 again at the same time. Take our fuzzy selection tool. Select both halves. Going to take our dark green. And we can do them all flat if you want like that. I'm going to do a fade like we did on the other leaves, because I think doing these flat, just all one colour, it will look too colouring book style, which is something we're actively trying to avoid. Let's duplicate that green layer, because we want a lighter green. Let's okay, now we're going to take these other leaves here and we're going to do the green on them. We're going to take our dark green first. Just going to leave the little gap for the light. Just the highlight. Back to our selection tool. And take the remaining two leaves there. For the selection. Take our green again. So now we're going to deal with these leaves here. So again, we're going to do them in two selections like we did before. I'm going to take this one and this one. This time we're going on to the lighter green. Just leaving a little tip that's not fully saturated. Selection tool again. Also, when we're drawing digitally, there's a lot of repetition with the tools and such we use. So I've got a macro keypad that has the tools that I can access quite quickly. Now we've got these open tips here. We could do them whatever colour we liked, but generally, as we can see, we haven't got very many colours in this. We've got green, red, blue and yellow. I don't want to throw in another random colour just for these parts that would bring it out of the colour palette. I wouldn't want to put a purple in just for the sake of having purple tips. So I'm going to use red just to keep in the colour palette we've got going. The rest of the pieces haven't got purple in it either. So I'm just trying to stick to a limited colour palette here. So we're going to take these, what the V's that we put in it. Going to go into a red layer. Take our brush. Just colour them in red. We don't have to worry about highlighting them. We can do them flat red. That's another one finished. So we save there. So only two more to go. So I had to pause the video for a moment there, I had to take a phone call. So we're back to colouring in. Same principles again we're going to do here. Onto the fourth flower. And we're going to do something a bit different here. So we're going to go into our folder, onto a layer here. Take our line tool. We're going to turn the brush down a little bit just so we've got a bit more control over it. And what we're going to do on the bottom half of these, on half of each of these bigger flowers, we're going to do it solid black. This is quite a common technique. So I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to put some stabilizer on the brush. We're just going to draw a line kind of parallel to the line around it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, if you want to go a bit thicker or a bit thinner, if you wanted to go super close, you could. And you want to get somewhere kind of parallel. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter if it goes a little bit, but we see here it's run off the line. We don't want that. You know, we want it to go somewhere. If we're doing this, that's not going to look so good. There we go. So same here. So line following alongside it. Again, if you notice, the lines here, they're not perfectly round. We've got a bit of a straight edge, and that's fine because leaves aren't perfectly round. So you don't have to think this curve has to be exactly perfect every time, because, you know, if you were to look at a leaf in real life, it wouldn't be like that. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take our fuzzy selection tool, those 4 areas. We're going to go to our spray can brush, onto our black layer, and we're just going to fill them in solid black. Now, I specifically did something here. If we see where I filled in there, we've got this tiny, tiny, tiny white line, only a few pixels. Now, there was a reason why I did that, to show that this macro I used, that enlarges the selection just by a pixel or so each time. That's the reason we use it. It stops that issue of the white line. Now, it's slightly different in every program. I know you can do it in GIMP. I know you can do it in Photoshop. I know in Procreate, you use the fuzzy selection and you have to put the slider fairly high up into the high 90s. If it's any lower, you're starting to get that as well there. So now I just expanded selection. We get rid of that fuzzy line. So if you find yourself, at least in Krita and Photoshop, stuff like that, doing it, that's probably the reason. Okay, so we've got half of them done black. So what we're going to do these smaller leaves now. So back to our fuzzy selection tool. Every time that little screen pops up very quickly, it's just because I've made a macro to enlarge the selection by 1 pixel every time. 2 or 3 pixels is usually enough to do it, unless you're using a very fat line. If you're using a very thin line, you might find only 1 pixel will be enough. So back to our spray can tool. And all we're going to do is the bottoms of these. Turn the stabilizer off that, I don't need it here. Again, this one's coming about halfway up each of the leaves here. You see black fades about halfway. Now, these little spikes, we've done them black on the other ones, and I specifically left these ones open in this particular example. So again, let's get our fuzzy selection tool. All these at the same time, because they're all going the same colour. Got our selection. We're just going to make these yellow. There we go. just to add some colour and a variant to the outside edge. Now we're going to go back and we're going to finish these halves of the leaves now. We're going to take our flower selection, fuzzy selection tool, all 4 of them. Grower selection. Now with growing selection, we can see it comes past the edge of the black line, but due to the way that Krita and stuff like Photoshop works, a layer above will draw over the top of a layer below. So it doesn't matter if we're going to do this whatever colour, because this black line is over the top. So it doesn't matter that the colour underneath runs a little bit past. The black's going to cover it. So we're going to go onto our green this time. I think we're going to use a dark green. Actually, no, we're going to use the light green. Change my mind. Go back to our airbrush tool. And we're just going to colour and leave an edge. Now, we see this side, we've got a very definitive white line. This side, it's just a blurred out white line because of the airbrush tool. So don't worry about trying to get a solid line with the airbrush tool. You won't do it. It's not designed to do that. But I am trying to somewhat, not necessarily exactly, somewhat of a light edge around it to match. It doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere close and you'll be fine. There we go, we're good there. So let's zoom out a little bit. Deselect. So we're going to work on these smaller leaves now. Back to my fuzzy selection tool. I've said that a million times today. Now we're going to use the dark green on this one. And as there's no fade in between the two, I can put it on the same layer. You only really need to put it on like this here when we've gone from a dark green to a light green. We don't want them overpowering each other. I'll just put that black in. Go back to the green, bring that green out a bit further. I'm going to bring this yellow layer down because what I want to do this time, some yellow tips on these leaves. Again, if you wanted to go from the dark green to the light green to the yellow, you could. If you wanted to use a different colour, if you had a purple or something in there, do you want to throw that in? That's another way to go as well, that'd work. But that's number 4, coloured and done. So let's save. And number 5, again, we can see we've got not much difference between the leaves, but all we're going to do now is we're going to do some colouring as a big blob in the middle of each one, slightly different. So we're going to zoom in. Close folder 4. This is a great thing if you're working digitally. If you've got folders, you can separate everything out and work on things. You can move this whole layer. You could move the whole picture in one go without having to interfere with anything else. So it's real useful for that. So once again, our fuzzy selection tool. Now I might find, let's see here, the black's a bit too big, the size, so we're going to turn that down to about 150. We just want a little ball of black there, not right to the edge, not like we've done before. Just a little hint of it. Back to the black layer. So what we're trying to do is, I don't want the black here to run all like that and all like that, because if we were to do that, we now see we get a very nondescript just mess of an area there. So I'm just leaving it so we can still see the edge of the leaf, but we've still got enough black to make definition between these edges, the corners here. So we've got separation. Again, if we'd have went heavy black there, this edge of the leaf would have been lost into that, which is fine. You know, we did it here. It can be done, but I want to go for a different style here. So again, like I said before, each style doesn't necessarily work in every situation. Sometimes you have to use a different technique when you're using a different in a different piece. And that's fine. I mean, this picture, this particular flower here, this is very much more old school than some of the others. So we've got a lot of this you know, semicircular black already in the petals. So we're going to go into our green layer, take our fuzzy selection, now I keep making my selections on the flower layer. The flower layer, if we look, this is the line work, so it means we select everything up to the edges. It's a lot easier than if I was trying to paint it without that and I'd have to then go and tidy it up. It means it doesn't run past the lines and it keeps things a lot neater to work with. So we're going to take that one at the same time. I'll take that one and that one and that one. We're going to go to our green layer here. We'll turn this up. About 350 again should be good. And we're just going to paint it on. Now I'm leaving the edges of these fairly open with the green. Back to our spray can tool. Now we could leave these edges all the way open like that if you so wish. I think that looks a bit bare and a bit nondescript. It kind of leaves them floating out in the nowhere. So we're just going to get some yellow. And just like we did before, fuzzy selection tool. So I'm just going to take, I have to do this in 2 goes because this leaf here, if we run across there, throw it all the way in there. It's okay, we can do all but 1 leaf in 1 go. We're going to go on to our yellow. Take our brush. Just creep in with the yellow. So I'm not bothered that the yellow finishes and there's a bit of open area. It's hit a bit there. I might actually go back and change that a little bit. So we've got the yellow, a little bit of open texture, open area, and then into the green. Okay. Fuzzy selection tool again. onto the yellow layer. Yellow there. Some yellow there. I've just got to grab that one. A bit of yellow there. So technically we could say all 5 of them are finished now and they're all good to go. Now, something that I like to do as well, which anyone can do this on all of them. This isn't specific. We're working on flower 1 again now. So I'm going to take my fuzzy selection, select everything outside it. Just grow it a few times. Big brush now. And we're just going to put a little bit of burst of blue behind it. I think that just makes it jump out a little bit off the page. So we're going to do the same on flower 2 here, fuzzy selection. Select everything outside of it, which will go up to the edge. Go back onto our blue layer. Just start in the middle and circle out a little bit. So again, just a little bit in the middle here. Now what we're going to do, because this area is closed off, it missed here, so we're going to have to do this in 2 selections. Select the outside of it. Raw selection, go to the blue. Now on this one, I would just do the blue around the actual main body, main head of the flower here. That'd be enough. I wouldn't want to come down and try put some more behind it, otherwise, as you can see, it gets quite heavy and it starts to lose the effect after. So if I just undo that and just leave it behind the actual main part of the flower, I think that looks a lot better than trying to bring it all down. So number 4, again, same process. We can do this in 1 selection here. Onto our blue layer, onto our brush. Just a little bit of a burst there. 5. Again, rinse and repeat here. Onto our blue layer. Just put a little burst behind it. Now that will be completely finished if you wanted to put it off as a flash sheet. All the designs are good to go. The blue just adds as a background to give it a bit more definition. You could change the blue for any other colour. You know, you could do it as a purple or as a black. I'm just sticking to blue because I haven't got a purple or another colour in the sheet. Now, the last step I would do, if we were doing this, if this was to go up on the wall, if you were making it as an actual flash sheet, I would take my drawing tool. Let's get the to a decent size. Now I've noticed we've just got a bit of a blue here, so all we can do is, there we go, we see that's in number 5. Again, working with layers, it's easy to work out what's where. We can just rub that out. Let's make this a bit bigger. Just rub that out there. I go to black. Oh, that dot's too big. Bigger than that. I think somewhere around 40 should be good. So let's. That's perfect. Now, what I would do now to make this into a final piece It's a very, very common technique on both tattoos and flash in old school. You just go around and put some dots. They don't have to be perfect. Just around to fill in the background so we haven't got this white open area. I generally don't tend to put it on the art there. I like to, on the designs, I like to have it stay away from that. Anyway, you can fit it in. Let's have a quick look around if there's any areas that seem to be a little bit bare. Maybe another one just at the top here. That looks good to me. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to call that finished. So there we go. That's how to do some different style leaves on some different flowers, some different shading techniques, some shading styles, some different design techniques, shapes and all that. I hope you found this video useful. Again, if you try any of these and you draw anything based on this, send me a link, put it in the comments below. I'd love to see what you've done with it. So I'll see you guys next time.